My home lab setup. It's not really that pretty, but it's functional. I do want to preface this video by saying that if I were to redo everything, obviously knowing what I know now, I would implement everything absolutely completely differently. So this is more of a demonstration to show my infrastructure and what I have configured instead of like a tutorial on like how to do things or how to set things up. So I want to get right into this here and show you guys the infrastructure that I'm working with here. It's really not much. It's also extremely messy. I will assure you though, at one point this was taken care of. You can see some leftover remnants of like me making an effort with some Velcro straps here. But I've changed so much stuff around that it just kind of grew into this mess. But to start things off, working from the top to the bottom here, this monitor right here is like a crappy 1600 by 900 monitor that I have plugged into these servers via VGA and DVI, which basically I can just access these servers and go to the terminal if I don't have access to SSH into them or use the Proxmox UI. This right here is nothing special. It's just a Netgear Nighthawk router. This guy is a R6700. This right here is a crappy little 4-port TP-Link switch. It's unmanaged, so it basically just gives me more Ethernet ports is the only purpose it serves there. This is my ISP-provided modem. If we go down to the first server here, this guy I got for 25 bucks, decommissioned from my old job, so I would say it was worth it for me. But it is running a i7 6700K. It has 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It has a 32 gig M.2 SSD, which is just for booting Proxmox. It's really small, and that's like an Intel Optane. It has a 500 gigabyte SATA SSD, which I just use for holding all of the containers and virtual machines. And then it has a 2 terabyte hard drive, which I mainly used for network attached storage and bulk files. So if we make our way down to this guy right here, this one's a little bit crappier. It is a i5 4460, yes, a 4th gen i5, so that's still running the DDR3 platform. That guy has 16 gigs of DDR3. It has only one drive. It's just a 500 gig SATA SSD that boots both Proxmox and all the VMs and containers. The story behind this guy is that it was basically my first desktop that I ever got when I was about like 12. So yeah, it's been in my life for quite some time now. Also, I don't have it pictured here, but 2 of these are connected to access points. One is connected to a disconnected garage on my property, and then the other one is connected just on the opposite side of the house, just to extend the range. And those are both just old crappy Netgear routers that are functioning in access point mode. But I do want to let you guys know that this thrown together mess isn't going to be around for too long. When I move here in a couple of months, I want to build a all-in-one overkill server that's probably going to have like an Intel Xeon or AMD EPYC CPU, and I want to host everything on there and do it correctly now with the knowledge that I have now. And that would be a pretty good video idea, so stay tuned for that. That is a possibility. But now that you know the physical infrastructure, I want to jump into the logical diagram to show you guys all the services that I'm hosting on these. Now here is the logical diagram. So to show you guys how it links to the picture before, here is that router, here's that little crappy 4-port switch, these are the 2 APs, and then these are the 2 servers. Here's the i5 server. It's named Molasses because it's really slow. And this is the i7 server, which is named Drying Paint because it's also very slow. And then obviously you can see that the router connects to the internet. And then this is another thing I've hosted, GitHub Pages, which is cloud hosted. I'll get to that later. And then these 2 servers are running bare metal hypervisors, which is Proxmox, And that's what I use to host all my VMs and containers. So let me jump straight into Proxmox so I can show you guys how those are set up. Now we are in Proxmox. So I just access this over my browser, and then this is my data center, which is named Slowpokes because both my servers are really old and slow. So if I expand this, you can see both my servers. They're in a cluster here, so I can access them both from the same web UI. This is Drawing Paint, the i7 server, and you can see all the containers and VMs that I'm hosting. And if I extend Molasses, the i5 server, you can see the container and the VMs that I'm hosting. So now I'll dive into more of the specifics on each service. I want to start this off on the i7 server here, and I'm going to start with the virtual machines. And this is OpenMediaVault. So I'm going to navigate here to the web UI for OpenMediaVault. Now we're here at the web UI for OpenMediaVault. So this is my dashboard. You can see like my CPU usage. Nothing's really using it right now. My load average within the last certain amount of times. And then here is my storage. So I just have that 2 terabyte hard drive put aside for this. And you can see I'm using about 600 gigabytes. So in OpenMediaVault, I can set up my network attached storage. So if I go to Storage, File Systems, you can see here is that 2 terabyte pool here. And I shouldn't say pool because it's not an RAID array or anything like that. I just straight up threw the 2 terabyte drive at this. And then if I go to Services, SMB, Shares, you can see that I have, this is the network share that is over SMB, and it's named Vault. So this is basically how I access the network attached storage over the network. And I can actually point all of my VMs at this IP address that the share is advertised on, so then they can store their bulk files there. This is pretty inefficient, and I would do it completely different now because this creates an issue where the boot order, this needs to boot first, or else the other VMs can't mount the drive because it mounts it on boot. So if I were to do this again, I would just use ZFS directly in Proxmox and then just straight up pass through the ZFS pool to the VMs and containers instead of like mounting it over the network. But for now, this serves its purpose. The next VM that I have set up on the i7 server is CML. So CML is Cisco Modeling Labs. I either boot CML or GNS3. They're both just like virtual networking lab platforms here, and I use them to study for my CCNP. So if I open up this demo lab here, I can basically, it allows me to just like set up network topologies and mess with them. So you can go to R1. Let's see, I'm already in the console here for R1. So I can do like show IP route, stuff like that. And it allows me just to set up testing topologies and understand how stuff works. The last VM that I have set up on the i7 server is this Linux Mint VM. Currently, VNC is having an issue in the Proxmox console, so I can't like graphically see it right now, and I don't feel like troubleshooting it. But it's just a basic Linux Mint desktop with XFCE on it, so I can't demonstrate it in this video. But now let's hop into the LXC containers that I host on this server. LXC containers are just like Linux containers that are hosted in Proxmox. They are not Docker containers to my understanding. They're different. And a lot of these guys were all spun up using helper scripts. And these helper scripts are very helpful, of course. And I want to show you guys here this website right here. This has a bunch of Proxmox helper scripts, and support this, please. This is great. It makes it so easy to spin up LXC containers. You basically just find the service that you want. So let's say I wanted to do Jellyfin, right? And then all you do is you paste this into the Proxmox shell, it grabs the script and spins up the container. It's super easy. The first LXC container that I have set up is OpenWrt. So OpenWrt is like a virtualized router similar to pfSense or OpenSense, but a lot simpler. And for this guy, I have my TorGuard VPN map to this, so then I can point VMs and containers on Proxmox at this virtualized router, and then it routes their traffic through the VPN. So any torrenting type stuff where I don't want my public IP leaked, I use this guy to route through it. And if I go to network interfaces, this ton0 interface is what I map to a virtual interface in Proxmox. In my case, I use VMBR1 for anything I want routed through the VPN, and VMBR0 for my normal one that gets like natted through my network. And then if I go to firewall and port forwards, you can see these are a lot of the services that I have hosted. And these 10.50 IPs here are ones that are using the virtualized router and getting assigned a DHCP address. And I basically port forward these to my actual network, so like my 192.168 network, and then I can just access them via these ports here. So then I don't have to be inside the 10.50.50 network to access them. The next container that I host is Deluge, and Deluge is just a torrenting client, similar to Qubit Torrent. And basically what I can do with this is torrent anything I want. So if I go to DistroWatch, and let's say I want to torrent this Manjaro ISO here, I can do add, and do URL, or I could do the file, paste that in, add it, and sees how much it is, add, and then that will start downloading here, and it'll start leeching the file. So that's just how I torrent things through this guy. Next, I have SABnzbd, and this is basically the same thing as Deluge, but it's for NZB files. So instead of torrenting, I'm downloading NZB files utilizing Usenet. I'm not going to go into the details of Usenet here, but I will just tell you it's far superior to torrenting. So if you want to figure that out, you can dive into that rabbit hole yourself. But basically, I can add the NZBs and it'll download them here. Now we have what is called the R stack, ARR. All these applications end in ARR, and this first one here is Prowlarr. And what this does is you can add all of your indexers to it. So then when you're searching for a torrent file or NZB file, it can like use these indexers. As you can see here, these are all like torrenting indexers, but this one with the check by it is NZB Geek. That just goes to show that I'm literally not even using the torrenting ones because NZBs are like so superior. And this gets talked to by the other applications to search for stuff. Now, the next one is Radarr. And Radarr is for finding movies. So I just want to preface this by saying I do not condone torrenting or getting NZBs for copyright protected material. This legally is assuming that you have your own Blu-rays per se and you burn them and you put them on your own file server and you're searching for them, something along those lines. But like if I wanted to search a movie here, let's say I had it burned on Blu-ray and I wanted to download it, I could just search the best movie of all time here. You could click this, and then you can see this is mounted at my network attached storage, and then I can pick what quality profile I want, and it's actually really nice. The next one is Sonarr. So Sonarr is essentially the same thing as Radarr, but it's for shows. So if I wanted to just search a show, which is the best show of all time, in my opinion, that's not biased at all, you can click this, and then the really cool thing about Sonarr, right, is that you can set it to get like future episodes. So as something's coming out, or as you're like burning your Blu-rays and it shows up on your file server, it will pull the new ones as they come in because it'll keep actively searching for them. So it's super cool. Also, with both Radarr and Sonarr, if I go into settings and go to media management, when it downloads them, it can rename them to a specific format that you want for your media server to pick up on, and then place them in a certain file structure. So it makes it super easy to organize all of your media, and then it makes it really simple for your media viewer, such as Jellyfin or Plex, to pick up on those and easily view them. So yeah, these guys are really awesome. Next, we have Jellyfin, and Jellyfin is the media viewer, the media center. So this is what I access when I actually want to view my content. This can host things like shows, music, movies, and I can just access it over an app. There's even apps on the Apple TVs in the house, and my whole family uses this, and it's really cool. So you can see here, continue watching. I was watching the Warcraft movie. Obviously, I hope you guys believe this is not me. This is my mother. I'm not watching Married at First Sight. But you can go to movies, you can watch whatever here, and it's pretty awesome. I personally use Jellyfin instead of Plex or MB because it's a little less corporate and more open source friendly. Now, to wrap up the whole media services, this is Jellyseerr, and this is a sort of front end that you can access. It's mainly for giving out to family or friends that are using your Jellyfin, and it's kind of like Netflix, like how it suggests like movies and like you can see like what's trending, what's popular, and it just makes it really simple for the non-technical people that they don't have to go into like a separate thing for movies like Radarr, a separate thing for Sonarr, and a lot of that you can access all like the administrative stuff. So this is something you can just hand out. Like I have my family on this, they can like pick a movie, let's say this, can request it, and this doesn't assure that they get it. It's only if you have the file, right? Or if you want to download the file. And they can pick the quality. And what's really cool about this is that then I, as the admin, get a push notification that says that the account requested it, and I can either approve or deny that request. And when that movie is downloaded and it's published to my Jellyfin server, I also get a notification saying it's made available. So this just makes the whole process very simple for people that aren't very technical and don't have to understand the underlying processes at play. Now we're at the last LXC container hosted on the i7 server, and this is Homarr. So Homarr is really cool. It's basically just a dashboard where you can link all of your services that you have hosted. This is especially helpful if you don't use subdomains, so all of these have a random IP address and port assigned. And here you can see I can customize the board, then I can enter edit mode, I can move these around, and I can change what all of these are pointing to. Honestly, the way I have it set up, I don't have monitoring or anything configured, so it's no different than a bookmarked folder in my browser, but you have to admit it looks pretty damn cool. Now we have completely covered the i7 server dry and paint, so now we can move on to Molasses. So I'm going to start from the top here on this one. So we only have one LXC container hosted. This one is just hosting a minimal Debian container, which I have Samba share set up. This is just more network attached storage, but it's on an SSD. I only have like 100 gigs thrown at it, but it's just for like when I need to fastly like transfer some files from like one computer to another in the house. It's kind of useful. So to demonstrate that, let me open up PCManFM here. Just any file browser will do. And if I smb://192.168.1.7, I think it's on. Yep. Public, we can enter this. I did have some shows in here at one point, but yeah, it's pretty basic network attached storage. Now we can get on to the virtual machines. So the first virtual machine that I want to cover is this massive one here. So this guy is running a Debian server, and it's hosting Portainer on it. So Portainer hosts all these Docker containers, and we'll jump right into Portainer now. Now we're in Portainer, which is just like a front end for hosting Docker containers. It organizes them really nicely, and it makes it really easy to spin up Docker containers. So let's go to my containers here, and you can see that I have all of these guys hosted on here. So you can access the console from all, well, I guess apparently I can't right now with that one, but basically this is where you manage all your Docker containers, and now we can dive straight into each one of these guys. The first Docker container here that I want to cover is my Cloudflare DDNS. There's really nothing to see here. There's not a front end to view this from, but what this does is it makes it so I don't have to pay for a static IP through my ISP, because with residential internet plans, typically your ISP will give you a lease on your IP, and when that expires, your public IP will renew. Therefore, your public IP will always be changing. If you have a home lab, that's really obnoxious, because whenever you want to access your stuff externally, it might be under a new IP address, and you have no clue unless you are like at home and can figure out what your IP is. This is a service that's constantly running in the background and checking what my public IP currently is. If it does change, then it will realize that, obviously, and it will point my public domain name at it. So whenever I access anything externally, I use my public domain name, which, because of this, is always pointed at my real public IP at any given point in time. So it's super helpful. The next Docker container that I want to show is NGINX Reverse Proxy Manager. So this guy is really helpful for organizing your home lab. If I go to proxy hosts here, I'm going to blur out this because it's all my public domain names and I don't really have anything secured too well, so I don't want strangers accessing it. But what this does is all of these IP addresses here, these are all private IP addresses, and it can point them at my subdomains associated with my domain name, which is really awesome, so I don't have to remember all these IP addresses. And then it can also create SSL certificates, so I can access them over HTTPS, which is way more secure, opposed to using HTTP. And it does this using Let's Encrypt, which is super helpful, and it like auto renews SSL certificates and everything. Immich is my photo backup solution. I refuse to pay for a Google Photos sort of plan or iCloud, so I host my own image backup. I'm not going to log into this or show you guys anything because it's going to be a bunch of pictures of like my family and personal stuff, but basically you can go through this, see all your photos, and it's like iCloud photos, right? But the only downside to it is that recently I believe they switched to a paid model. That means that all of the people that used it before the paid model, like me when it was completely free, are locked into like a permanent free trial of some sort, which I don't know how updates are going to work with that, and I don't feel that comfortable using it. So I'm probably going to migrate to Nextcloud Photo soon. But that's really it for Immich. It's just photo backup. Next, we have Actual. So Actual is a budgeting thing that you can host where you can basically record all your finances. It's like super awesome. I just started using this recently. I'm just going to show you guys their demo. I'm obviously not going to pull up my real finances. So like, obviously, like, you know, this isn't my real data here. But with Actual here, you can log all your transactions. You can categorize everything. You can track like your total like net worth here with all accounts. Like you can just track everything, and it's like super granular, super awesome. And before I used Actual, I would use spreadsheets. I used like LibreOffice Calc to manage all my finances, and that it's just so tedious doing that. With this, you can like import transactions, everything like that. And I would really recommend trying Actual if you're like me and you like to document all of your finances. The last Docker container hosted on the i5 server is Vaultwarden. So Vaultwarden is what I use for my password manager. It's a fork of Bitwarden, and you still use the Bitwarden client to access it. But I choose Vaultwarden just because it has the free OTP codes for your two-factor without paying for the paid plan. And obviously, like again with this, I'm not going to log into it because you're going to see all my usernames and stuff. But trust me, if I did put my credentials there, it would work. Now I've covered everything here with all my Docker containers that are hosted on that Debian server in Portainer, and I want to get into my Ubuntu server. So on this Ubuntu server, I have Pterodactyl hosted, and this is Pterodactyl Panel, and within Pterodactyl, I host all of these different game servers. So if I switch here to Pterodactyl, you can see my 3 servers that I have hosted. So this is my TeamSpeak server. If you don't know, TeamSpeak is just like a VoIP client. It's pretty outdated at this point, and it's way better than Discord in my opinion because you can host it yourself, and it's cooler. Trust me. And here's Minecraft, just the Java edition. I had a survival server that I was hosting, and I'll open one up. There's a bunch of errors, which is awesome. But anyways, this is Plutonium. Currently on Plutonium, I was hosting Black Ops 2 Zombies for me and my buddies to play through all the old Easter eggs. And Pterodactyl is just like awesome. You can manage all of your game servers from one centralized spot. I'm going to restart this to get rid of the errors so you can kind of see it doing its thing. But this just pulls Docker containers. And to spin up these game servers, it's super simple because the community makes these things called, they're eggs, but they're just like JSON files. And it's just like a template that defines how to spin up a server for your specific game. So you can manage all of your servers from one centralized panel, and you can even like access the files, set up FTP access, you can even like edit text files in here, which is like, look, you can pull these up, save stuff. And if you host any game servers, I would totally recommend using Pterodactyl Panel. The last virtual machine running on the i5 server is Nextcloud, and I didn't note this, but Nextcloud's also running on an Ubuntu server VM. And this guy is absolutely awesome. This was the reason that I started my Homelab. I hosted stuff on Windows in the past, but like this was the reason I started like a bare metal type hypervisor full Homelab, was because of Nextcloud. It's super versatile. It replaces my Google Drive. And one thing that's really cool is I have like a Collabora Office integration set up. So this is like Google Docs, right? And it's all saving on my server, and I can even share this guy and we can all edit it live. So it's just like, it's super cool. And then you can see here, Joplin, this is what I use for my notes. Everything syncs to this. And there's a bunch of different applications that can use Nextcloud syncing because it just uses WebDAV. And it makes it so all my notes are synced across all my devices at once. Here you can see all of my documents here. So you can log everything. Like these are when I used to record my finances in LibreOffice calc files. And also like some Linux file managers like Cinnamon and like Cinnamon's Nemo and GNOME's Nautilus have Nextcloud integration built straight into the file manager. So you can pull it right up. So yeah, Nextcloud is awesome. You can also add all these different apps you can install. I used to use their password manager. Didn't care for it because it was kind of slow. But I use their deck a lot, which, well, I use the school one more, but this tech one, you can see like you set up cards. It's like Trello. It's like that. And you can add all sorts of different apps. So Nextcloud, I would highly recommend. Even if you don't host it yourself, just paying a third party to host this is probably still way more secure than using something like Google Drive. Now we covered everything that I'm hosting locally, and I just wanted to go over the last piece here, which is GitHub Pages. This is how I host my blog. So if I switch over to a browser here, and I type in the actual GitHub Pages link for my Git repository, you can see this just redirects to my my actual domain here, blog.citrus.com. So all that does really is this is a statically generated website that I use Hugo for. I'm not paying Microsoft any money. If you don't know, Microsoft owns GitHub. To do this, it's very low powered, so it's a free service. And I don't have this locally hosted just because my network really isn't that secure So and plus it'd just be annoying. So, and I don't understand web dev stuff or Apache or anything. So I figured it'd just be easier to do this for now. And this is my blog. I'm going to take this opportunity to plug my blog, because why not? I really recommend you guys check this out. I'm going to make the blog post here and link my videos beforehand when they're unlisted and still processing on YouTube and Odyssey, so you guys can see them a little bit early if you want to. And this was my first video, and you can see it just kind of, it's not as long as the video, obviously, but it just goes over like what I went through. And in the future, I might do some just blog posts that aren't associated with the video here. But yeah, that's how I host my blog on GitHub Pages. And that is everything in my home lab. We went over the physical infrastructure and all of the services that I'm hosting on there. If you guys don't know, obviously, there are tons of benefits to self-hosting. All of this stuff I feel like I truly own. I'm giving less and less data to companies like Google and Microsoft that otherwise I would be utilizing their cloud services. Plus, it just gives me a bunch of experience. It's super fun, and I would recommend self-hosting to absolutely anyone. This will definitely not be the last self-hosting server-related content on the channel here. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have plans when I move out to create a overkill all-in-one server where I'm going to reconfigure everything. And along my journey, I've just been finding more and more of these services that I want to host, and I keep adding them to my server. Pretty soon, my current setup is going to get overloaded. Who am I kidding? Like, there's already way too much stuff hosted on my current home lab with this crappy hardware. But yeah, it's a never-ending journey. I'd recommend it to anyone. It's secure. We're taking our data back from big tech. And yeah, it's really fun, and I really enjoy home labbing. And I just want to say, I really appreciate it if you guys made it through this whole video. A lot of these services I could do a whole video on itself. I just kind of had to breeze through it because I didn't want this video to be painfully long. But yeah, I just kind of breezed through all of them there, gave you guys a general overview of my current home lab. And if you liked the video, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. Also, check out my blog. And I want to also plug my Odyssey. I'd recommend using Odyssey over YouTube because YouTube is owned by Google, and Google is going to farm our data, obviously. They have all their algorithms. And if you just want to watch me on something that isn't YouTube, I'd recommend Odyssey. I upload all my videos there as well. So go check that out. And thank you guys for watching this video.